The mining colony of Kepler, 442b, had always been a place where hope went to die. 347 light-years from Earth, the dusty red planet offered nothing but copper deposits and endless stretches of barren wasteland. Dr. Sarah Chun had been stationed there for 8 months, serving as the colony's only xenobiologist, though most days she wondered why they even bothered with the position. The planet seemed as lifeless as a tomb. That morning started like any other. Sarah checked her atmospheric readings, updated her research logs with another entry of no significant biological activity detected, and prepared for another routine survey of the northern canyons. The colony administrators kept insisting she expand her search radius, hoping she might find something valuable enough to justify the enormous cost of maintaining their operation. She loaded her hoverbike with standard equipment: atmospheric analyzers, soil samplers, emergency medical kit, and enough water and rations for a 3-day expedition. The other colonists barely looked up as she departed. Most of them were miners or engineers, practical people who had little interest in what they called bug hunting. Sarah didn't mind their indifference. She had grown used to working alone. The northern canyons stretched for hundreds of kilometers, carved by ancient rivers that had dried up millions of years ago. Sarah followed the winding paths between towering rock formations, their surfaces painted in shades of rust and amber by millennia of mineral deposits. Her instruments remained stubbornly silent, detecting nothing more interesting than trace amounts of methane and the occasional mineral vein. By noon, she had covered nearly 60 kilometers without finding anything noteworthy. She was beginning to consider turning back when her motion sensors started beeping frantically. Sarah pulled her hoverbike to a stop and checked the readings. Something large was moving about 2 kilometers ahead, hidden behind a cluster of massive boulders. Her heart began racing. In 8 months of surveys, she had never detected movement from anything larger than microscopic organisms. She activated her bike's stealth mode and approached slowly, careful not to create any sound that might startle whatever creature awaited her. As she rounded the boulder formation, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Lying in a natural depression between the rocks was the most magnificent creature she had ever seen. It was enormous, easily 30 meters from nose to tail, with scales that shimmered between deep purple and midnight black. For powerful legs ended in claws that could have torn through titanium, and massive wings lay folded against its sides like collapsed sails. A dragon. An actual, living dragon on an alien world. But something was terribly wrong. The creature's breathing was labored and irregular, each exhale producing a weak puff of what looked like glittering dust. Its eyes, large as dinner plates, were half closed and cloudy. Deep gashes covered its hide, some still oozing a silver-blue substance that could only be blood. The dragon was dying. Sarah approached cautiously, her scientific training warring with her human instincts. Every protocol she had learned said to maintain distance, observe, and document. But, looking at the magnificent creature struggling for each breath, she couldn't bring herself to remain a passive observer. She dismounted her hoverbike and walked slowly toward the dragon, speaking in soft, reassuring tones. "Easy there, beautiful. I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help." The dragon's massive head turned slightly, one enormous eye focusing on her with surprising clarity. Sarah felt a jolt of recognition pass between them, as if the creature understood her intentions. Moving closer, she could see the extent of its injuries. The wounds appeared to be from some kind of energy weapon, their edges cauterized and infected. Whatever had attacked this dragon had meant to kill it slowly and painfully. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest at the cruelty, followed immediately by determination. She returned to her hoverbike and began unpacking her medical supplies. The emergency kit was designed for humans, but the basic principles of wound care should apply to any biological organism. She gathered antiseptic compounds, synthetic bandages, and a portable medical scanner that could analyze tissue samples and suggest treatment options. The dragon watched her preparations with interest but no fear. As Sarah approached with her supplies, it made a sound deep in its throat, almost like a purr. She took this as permission to proceed. Working carefully, she began cleaning the largest wound on the dragon's flank. The creature flinched initially, but then held perfectly still, as if understanding that she was trying to help. The medical scanner provided fascinating data. The dragon's biology was remarkably similar to Earth reptiles, but with significant differences that suggested advanced evolution and possibly even genetic engineering. As she worked, Sarah talked to the dragon constantly, explaining what she was doing and reassuring it that the treatment would help. The creature seemed to respond to her voice, its breathing becoming more regular and its posture more relaxed. She had always believed that intelligent beings could sense compassion across species barriers, and this seemed to confirm her theory. Hours passed as she treated wound after wound. Some required careful debridement. Others needed only cleaning and bandaging. The dragon's blood was indeed silver blue, with properties that reminded her of both hemoglobin and liquid metal. Her scanner indicated high concentrations of rare minerals that might explain the creature's obvious intelligence and longevity. As the sun began to set, painting the canyon walls in brilliant oranges and purples, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. The dragon was too injured to be moved, and she couldn't leave it alone overnight. She set up her emergency shelter near the creature's head and activated her suit's heating elements to ward off the planet's brutal cold. The dragon seemed to understand her intention to stay. It shifted its massive bulk slightly, creating a windbreak that would protect her small shelter. Sarah found herself smiling at the gesture. Intelligence, gratitude, and consideration. This was no mere animal, but a sentient being with complex emotions and social understanding. That night, as the alien stars wheeled overhead, Sarah maintained her vigil beside the injured dragon. She monitored its vital signs, adjusted bandages, and administered doses of broad-spectrum antibiotics that seemed to be helping fight the infections in its wounds. Every few hours, the dragon would turn its great head toward her and make that soft purring sound, as if checking to ensure she was still there. Around midnight, Sarah was startled by movement in the distance. Her motion sensors detected multiple objects approaching rapidly from the south. She grabbed her binoculars and felt her blood turn to ice at what she saw. 3 sleek ships were moving through the canyon, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian in the starlight. They flew in perfect formation, clearly searching for something. As they drew closer, Sarah could make out more details. Energy weapons mounted on articulated arms, sophisticated scanning equipment, and symbols painted on their sides that she didn't recognize. The dragon had noticed them too. Its eyes snapped fully open, and a low growl rumbled through its chest. The sound carried notes of fear, anger, and desperate defiance. Sarah realized with growing horror that these ships were probably responsible for the dragon's injuries. They had returned to finish what they started. The lead ship began emitting a scanning beam that swept back and forth across the canyon floor. Sarah knew it was only a matter of minutes before they detected the dragon's life signs. She had to make a choice: hide and hope they didn't notice her, or stand up to them and try to protect a creature that had shown her nothing but trust and gratitude. She looked into the dragon's magnificent eyes and saw intelligence, pain, and something that might have been hope. In that moment, Sarah Chun made the most important decision of her life. She activated her hoverbike's emergency beacon, sending a distress signal to the mining colony, then positioned herself between the dragon and the approaching ships. Whatever happened next, the lone dragon would not face its enemies alone. A human had chosen to stand beside it, and Sarah intended to prove that compassion could be as powerful as any weapon. The ships descended like mechanical vultures, their scanning beams cutting through the darkness with surgical precision. Sarah stood her ground, her heart hammering against her ribs as she watched the lead vessel settle onto the canyon floor 50 meters away. The other two took flanking positions, their weapons trained on the wounded dragon behind her. A hatch opened with a soft hiss, and 3 figures emerged. They were roughly humanoid, but taller than any human, with elongated limbs and skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their faces were hidden behind elaborate masks that gleamed with embedded technology, and they moved with the fluid grace of predators. The leader raised what was clearly a weapon and spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. To Sarah's surprise, her suit's translation software kicked in, converting the alien words into English with only a slight delay. "Human, you will move away from the creature. We have business to conclude." Sarah raised her hand slowly, making sure her movements appeared non-threatening while her mind raced through possible responses. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chun, xenobiologist with the Kepler mining colony. This creature is under my protection as a subject of scientific study." The alien tilted its head, and Sarah caught a glimpse of multiple eyes glittering behind its mask. "Your protection is meaningless, human. This dragon is a criminal who stole from our people. We have traveled far to recover what belongs to us and ensure justice is served." Behind her, the dragon made a sound that needed no translation. It was a cry of defiance mixed with profound sadness, the sound of a being who had been falsely accused and knew no one would believe its innocence. "What did it allegedly steal?" Sarah asked, buying time while she tried to formulate a plan. Her emergency beacon was still transmitting, but the mining colony was hours away even by the fastest transport. "Sacred crystals from our temple world," the alien replied. "Artifacts that maintain the life force of our entire civilization. Without them, thousands of our people will perish." Sarah felt her resolve waver for a moment. If the dragon truly had stolen something that vital, perhaps the aliens had justification for their pursuit. But then she looked back at her patient, seeing the intelligence in its eyes and remembering how gently it had responded to her care. This was not the behavior of a thief or criminal. "I've been treating this dragon for hours," she said firmly. "It's shown nothing but intelligence and gratitude. If it took your crystals, perhaps there was a reason. Have you considered that it might have been trying to help someone?" The alien's laugh was like breaking glass. "Dragons are known thieves and hoarders, human. They care nothing for the suffering of others, only for adding to their collections of precious things. This one will die here, and we will search its body for our property." "Over my dead body," Sarah said quietly, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. The 3 aliens exchanged glances, their masks flickering with what might have been communication lights. The leader stepped forward, raising its weapon. "If that is your choice, human, it can be arranged." That was when the dragon moved. Despite its injuries, the magnificent creature rose to its full height with shocking speed. Its wings spread wide, casting enormous shadows across the canyon walls, and its mouth opened to reveal rows of crystalline teeth. But instead of attacking, it did something that made Sarah's heart stop. It spoke. The words came in the same grinding language the aliens used, but translated by her suit into clear English. "The human speaks truth, Vorthak. The crystals were not stolen. They were freely given to save your dying child." The alien leader's weapon wavered slightly. "Impossible. Our young do not consort with dragons." The dragon's voice carried infinite sadness. "Your daughter, Kithara, found me dying in the void between stars. My ship had been destroyed by raiders, and I was drifting toward a black hole. She risked her life to save mine, pulling my escape pod aboard her vessel with tractor beams that nearly tore her ship apart." Sarah watched in fascination as the 3 aliens seemed to communicate through rapid flashing of lights on their masks. The leader's weapon lowered slightly. "Continue," it said, but its voice had lost some of its mechanical coldness. "When I recovered, I learned that Kethera suffered from the wasting disease that plagues your people," the dragon continued. "She was dying, her life force fading day by day. I had knowledge of ancient healing arts, but they required specific crystals to focus the energy. Your temple crystals were the only ones pure enough to save her life. You lie, the alien said, but there was uncertainty in its voice now. I offered to trade my own life for the crystals, the dragon pressed on. But Kethera refused. She said her people had become too focused on hoarding their sacred objects while ignoring the suffering around them. She took the crystals herself and brought them to me, begging me to save not just her, but to show her people a different way. The dragon's massive head turned towards Sarah. Just as this human has shown me compassion without asking for anything in return. Kethera believed that acts of selfless kindness could heal more than any crystal, and she was right. The healing I performed on her saved her life, but the compassion she showed me saved my soul. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face inside her helmet. The dragon continued its story, describing how it had successfully healed the alien's daughter, but how her own people had branded her a traitor for giving away their sacred crystals. The dragon had fled, carrying the burden of knowing it had caused division among the aliens, but also knowing that a young life had been saved. Kethera sent me messages in secret, the dragon said. She told me that her healing had inspired others to question the old ways. Some of your people began to understand that compassion and sharing were more sacred than any physical object. But the old Gar, led by you, Vorthak, declared us both criminals and swore to hunt us down. The alien leader's weapon was now pointing at the ground. Kethera is my daughter, it said slowly. She's been missing for 2 cycles. We believe she had been killed or captured. She lives, the dragon said simply. She established a sanctuary on the Rim Worlds where she helps refugees from the war zones. She uses the healing techniques I taught her to save lives across a dozen species. The crystals you seek so desperately are being used every day to bring hope to the hopeless. Sarah watched as the 3 aliens huddled together, their masks flashing in complex patterns. She could see the leader's certainty crumbling, replaced by doubt and something that might have been hope. Finally, the leader spoke again. If what you say is true, dragon, then we have pursued the wrong crime. But our people still suffer. Without the crystals, our healing temples cannot function. The dragon's response surprised everyone. Then come with me when I am healed, and I will teach your people what I taught Kethera. The crystals are tools, but the true power comes from the willingness to help others without thought of reward. Your daughter learned this. Perhaps others can as well. Sarah stepped forward, her medical training overriding her caution. The dragon is severely injured and needs time to recover. If you truly want to honor your daughter's memory and learn from this situation, help me heal it. Prove that your people can choose compassion over vengeance. The alien leader looked at her for a long moment, then slowly holstered its weapon. You would trust us to help after we threatened your life? The dragon trusted your daughter despite the risks, Sarah replied. I'm willing to trust you despite your threats. Sometimes faith in others is the only way to break cycles of violence and misunderstanding. What followed was the most extraordinary night of Sarah's life. The 3 aliens, whose names she learned were Vorthak, Zeleth, and Moran, possessed advanced medical technology that complemented her basic field kit perfectly. Working together, they began the careful process of healing wounds that went far deeper than just physical injuries. Vorthak's people, the Kithira, had been fighting a devastating war for decades. Their focus had shifted from exploration and learning to defense and resource hoarding. The sacred crystals had become symbols of their past glory rather than tools for creating a better future. As they worked, Vorthak shared stories of his daughter's childhood, describing a curious and compassionate young Kithira who had always questioned why they couldn't do more to help suffering beings. Zeleth and Miran added their own memories, painting a picture of an idealistic youth who had grown into a revolutionary healer. The dragon, whose name was Thyssarian, reciprocated by describing its long life spanning centuries. It had seen civilizations rise and fall, had witnessed acts of incredible cruelty and breathtaking kindness. Its meeting with Kethera had reminded it that individual choices mattered more than species or politics. Throughout the long night, Sarah found herself serving as a bridge between two very different but equally wounded peoples. Her human perspective, unburdened by their ancient grievances, helped them find common ground in their shared desire to protect and heal. As dawn broke over the canyon, painting the walls in brilliant gold and crimson, Thysarian's wounds were nearly completely healed. More importantly, the bonds of trust being forged around the injured dragon promised to heal much larger wounds that had festered between species for generations. But their work was far from over. In the distance, Sarah's instruments detected incoming ships from the mining colony, responding to her emergency beacon. Soon, she would have to explain to her own people why she had risked everything to save an alien dragon. The real test of whether compassion could truly bridge the gaps between different worlds was just beginning. The mining colony's ships arrived like a small fleet of metal wasps, their engines screaming across the canyon as they descended in defensive formation. Sarah watched them approach with a mixture of relief and dread. Relief because help had finally arrived, dread because she knew explaining the situation would be nearly impossible. Commander Martinez was the first to emerge from the lead transport, his face grim behind his helmet's visor. Behind him came a full tactical team, weapons ready, their movements sharp with military precision. Sarah had worked with Martinez for months, and she had never seen him look so tense. "Dr. Chun," he called out, his voice crackling through the comm system. "Step away from the alien vessels immediately. We're here to extract you." Sarah remained where she was, standing between the colony forces and the unlikely alliance that had formed around Thysarian. The dragon had risen to its full magnificent height, but its posture was protective rather than threatening. Vorthak and his companions had positioned themselves diplomatically, their weapons holstered but ready. "Commander, the situation is more complex than my emergency beacon could convey," Sarah said carefully. "These beings are not hostile. We've been working together to provide medical aid." Martinez's tactical team spread out in a practice formation, their weapons trained on both the dragon and the Kithira aliens. "Dr. Chun, you've been missing for over 18 hours. Your beacon indicated a life-threatening emergency. We're not taking any chances." Sarah felt the fragile trust that had been built through the night beginning to crack under the weight of military suspicion. She had to find a way to bridge this new gap before someone made a decision that would destroy everything they had accomplished. "Commander, I need you to trust me," she said, stepping forward slowly. "What I discovered here could change everything for the colony, for humanity, and for several alien civilizations. But only if we approach this with wisdom instead of weapons." Thysarian's great voice rumbled across the canyon, translated by the communication systems. "Human leader, your Dr. Chun has shown courage and compassion that honors her entire species. She has helped heal wounds that go far beyond my physical injuries." Martinez's helmet turned sharply toward the dragon. "It talks." "He talks," Sarah corrected gently. "His name is Thysarian, and he's been alive for over 3 centuries. The Kithira here are Vorthak, Zeleth, and Miran. We spent the night working together, and what we've learned could benefit everyone." Vorthak stepped forward, his movements carefully non-threatening. "Commander Martinez, we came here seeking justice, but found something far more valuable. Your Dr. Chun has taught us that different species can work together when they choose trust over fear. The standoff might have continued indefinitely if not for an unexpected intervention." Sarah's communication equipment suddenly crackled to life with an incoming transmission from deep space. The voice that emerged was young, female, and speaking the Kithira language with obvious excitement. "Father? Vorthak of the Temple Guard? This is Kethera. I received word that you were searching for Thysarian. Please tell me you have not harmed my friend." The effect on Vorthak was immediate and dramatic. The alien leader's weapon clattered to the ground as he rushed to his ship's communication system. Dada, my daughter, you live. We thought you were dead. Very much alive, father, and doing important work. Thyssarian taught me healing arts that have saved hundreds of lives. I've established medical stations across 12 systems, helping refugees from the Rim Wars. The crystals you seek are being used every day to ease suffering and bring hope to the hopeless. Sarah watched as Martinez and his team exchanged confused glances. The tactical situation they had prepared for was rapidly becoming something entirely different. Kethera's voice continued, now addressing Thyssarian directly. My ancient friend, are you well? I heard rumors that the old guard had sent hunters after you. Thyssarian's response carried notes of joy and relief. I am healing, young one, thanks to the compassion of a human doctor who reminded me that kindness exists in all species. Your father is here, and I believe he begins to understand what you try to teach your people. The conversation that followed was unlike anything Sarah had ever witnessed. Across the vastness of space, a daughter explained to her father how she had chosen to reject the isolationist policies of her people in favor of active compassion. She described the medical stations she had established, the lives she had saved, and the network of healers she was training. Vorthak listened with growing amazement as his daughter revealed that she had not stolen the sacred crystals, but had convinced the temple priest to loan them for humanitarian missions. The conservative faction had suppressed this information, declaring her a traitor rather than admit their sacred objects were being used to help other species. Father, Kethera said, her voice carrying across light years of space, I have something to show you and your new human friends. Her ship's transmission shifted to include visual data. The screens around the canyon suddenly filled with images of her medical stations. Kithira healers working alongside members of a dozen different species, healing wounds, curing diseases, and saving lives. The sacred crystals were there, but they were being used as tools of mercy rather than hoarded treasures. This is what the crystals were meant for, Kethera explained. Not to sit in temples gathering dust, but to actively heal and help. Thyssarian showed me that true sacredness comes from service, not from possession. Commander Martinez slowly lowered his weapon, his tactical training warring with the evidence before his eyes. Dr. Chun, are you telling me that we've stumbled into some kind of interspecies medical revolution? Sarah smiled, feeling the tension finally beginning to ease. Commander, I think we've discovered something much more important than copper deposits on this planet. What followed was the most extraordinary diplomatic session in human history. Using the canyon floor as an impromptu conference room, representatives of 3 species worked out an agreement that would reshape their corner of the galaxy. The human mining colony agreed to serve as a neutral meeting ground for peaceful interspecies contact. Their medical facilities, modest as they were, would be expanded with Kithira technology to create a proper hospital. Thyssarian would serve as a cultural liaison, teaching healing arts and helping to build trust between different civilizations. Vorthak, transformed by the revelation of his daughter's work and influenced by Sarah's example of selfless compassion, agreed to return to the Kithira home worlds with a new message. Instead of hunting dragons and hoarding crystals, his people would join the growing network of medical stations, sharing their advanced technology with others. The mining colony itself would be transformed. What had been a simple resource extraction operation would become a beacon of cooperation, a place where different species could meet safely and learn from each other. The copper deposits would still be mined, but the profits would fund humanitarian missions across the galaxy. As the sun reached its zenith, Thyssarian prepared for departure. His wounds were completely healed, but more importantly, his spirit had been restored by the kindness he had witnessed. Before leaving, he approached Sarah one final time. Dr. Chun, in my 3 centuries of life, I have seen empires rise and fall, witnessed acts of great cruelty and profound kindness. What you did here, Choosing to help a stranger without thought of reward represents the best of what intelligent beings can become. The dragon reached into a pouch on its harness and withdrew a small crystal, no larger than Sarah's thumb, but radiating soft, warm light. This is a healing stone attuned to your life force. It will help you in times of need, but more importantly, it will remind you that compassion is the most powerful force in the universe. Sarah accepted the gift with trembling hands. What happens now? Now, we build something better, Thyssarion replied. Your species, our species, all the species in this galaxy. We build a future where help is offered freely, where trust bridges the gaps between worlds, and where the lone and wounded are never left to face their trials alone. Vorthak approached, carrying his own gift, a small device that would allow Sarah to communicate with Kithier medical networks across the galaxy. Dr. Chun, you have taught an old warrior that strength comes not from weapons, but from the willingness to extend a hand in friendship. My daughter will be proud to call you sister. As the various ships prepare to depart, each heading toward their respective missions of healing and diplomacy, Sarah reflected on how a routine survey had become the catalyst for something extraordinary. She had set out that morning looking for signs of life and had found something infinitely more valuable, proof that compassion could transcend the boundaries between species. The mining colony of Kepler 442b was no longer a place where hope went to die. It had become a place where hope was born, nurtured by the simple truth that caring for others, regardless of their origin or appearance, was the fundamental characteristic of truly intelligent life. Months later, as Sarah worked in the expanded medical facility that had grown around the original mining colony, she often thought about that moment in the canyon when she had made the choice to help a dying dragon. That decision had created ripples that spread across the galaxy, touching countless lives and proving that sometimes the most important discoveries had nothing to do with scientific instruments or academic theories. They had everything to do with the courage to show compassion when it mattered most. The dragon's final exhale had not been one of death, but of rebirth for Thyssarion, for the relationships between species, and for the understanding that in a vast and often hostile universe, kindness remained the most powerful force of all.